The Greater Israel Agenda Exposed. All praise to the Most High. This is your brother Hassad. For anybody who is not familiar with what Greater Israel is, it's something that we find in the Bible, particularly in Genesis chapter 15. So I'm going to pull up the map real quick of Genesis, or I'm going to pull up the verse real quick of Greater Israel, or the verse about it. So this is Genesis 15, and I'll start at verse 18. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto your seed have I given this land. From the river of Egypt, that would be the Nile River, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So this is where you get this notion and this idea of greater Israel from. So when you see the things, and we're going to go into this momentarily, when you see some of the actions of the current and modern state of Israel, in terms of who they're fighting against, why they're fighting against them, the geographical location of their enemies, and all those things that kind of coincide with each other, there is a reason for this. And it's a multifaceted one. But one of the ultimate goals, and we will go about establishing this fact momentarily, is to establish greater Israel, the land that God promised to the children of Israel that extends from the Nile River all the way to the Euphrates River. Now, you'll see different maps of Greater Israel. So I'll share my screen. Here's one map of Greater Israel, right? So you have the Nile River, which runs essentially from the north of the eastern part of Egypt all the way essentially to the south, all the way into the Euphrates River, which goes up even in, as far as certain parts of Turkey. This is the agenda. This is what the ultimate goal is. The ultimate goal is either complete control over these territories or a proxy control over those said areas. The supreme ultimate goal is they actually control that area, and it now is absolved into the state of Israel. But in the meantime, they would certainly like to kind of vicariously control said entities. And we're going to get into it momentarily. But if you just take a look at the countries that are on the screen, they essentially all have one thing in common. Every country on this screen has at one point been hostile to Israel. And most of the countries, if not all of them, on the screen have actually gone to war with Israel. In 1948, Egypt, Jordan, various other countries went to war against Israel. In 1967, they continued to have another war. All of these countries have, at one point in time, fought against Israel. And is it ironic that you see on the right hand of your screen, they also are fighting against Iran right now. Now, interestingly enough, with this Greater Israel map, you see technically part of Greater Israel. It's kind of hard to, let me see if I can zoom in. No, I can't. Okay. But you can see part of it, just a small part of the territory of Greater Israel goes into part of Iran and southwest border. So we've got a presentation that we're getting ready to go into to kind of establish this fact, not kind of, to emphatically establish this fact, because there's a reason why things in the world are going on. And when the Bible tells us not to ignore any matter, whether great or small, it's things like this that we cannot ignore. This is the agenda of this foreign government, and it directly ties into biblical prophecy. Someone might ask, well, why should I care? Why should I care that the modern state of Israel is ambitious in their goals of achieving greater Israel? Well, one, those are sovereign nations: Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, Cyprus, Iran, etc. So if they're announcing that they essentially want to take that land, well, how does one nation go about taking another nation's land? Typically, it's not done peacefully. But two, and moreover, and probably more importantly, they're basically announcing I already said in the first part that they want to take these people's land. Now, what does that lead to? We see what's going on right now in the Strait of Hormuz, where a large amount of the world's oil goes through. I think that about a fifth, 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's a strategic asset for Israel. That would be a strategic asset for anybody. It clearly is for Iran, which is why there's a shutdown in the Strait of Hormuz right now. This is why the Bible calls this land the land of milk and honey. It's a prosperous land with an abundance of resources, oil, other various things. I'll say oil. What else? I had to think of something else afterwards. But the point being that there is a tremendous amount of reason as to why a nation would want control over this particular geographical area. And so as we get into the article, you're going to start to see some of these things. This is what Israel wants. They want to control the Nile River to the Euphrates River. Now, interestingly enough, the people who currently occupy the land of Israel, they are not the people in which the Nile River to the Euphrates River has been promised to. I'm talking about the people who currently occupy Israel. They are not the indigenous people of that land. They are not the ethnic descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they are predominantly the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. And that land was promised to God's chosen people, the true Israelites. The birthright, the blessing, was supplanted from Esau. So in their minds, what they're trying to do is get in their mind that which rightfully belongs to them. That's what they're trying to do. They're forced fitting themselves in the Bible. And it's funny because I've had people that I have discussions with, and they'll ask concerning, so-called Black and indigenous people being the Israelites. Oh, it's like you guys are forcing yourselves in the Bible. And it's the opposite. We are drawing ourselves out of the Bible in that when we read about, for example, think about this, everybody. What are the two greatest, or not greatest, I'll say, the two most historically significant instances on a people group being enslaved? What's number one and what's number two? What are the most historical, notorious, widely known instances in which a people group were enslaved? Think about that. It's the Israelites in ancient Egypt, and it's our people here in the Western Hemisphere. There's clearly a correlation with that. When we read about in Jeremiah chapter 3, where it says that it will no longer be said, the Lord lives, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Meaning when people make an oath, people would say, I swear by the God who brought up the children of Israel out of Egypt. That's how you would identify that God, by his actions. That's why Psalm 9:15 says, the Lord is known by the judgment which he executes. That's how people identified the God of Israel, with the God who dried up the Red Sea and drowned Pharaoh and his army. But there's going to come a day where it says, the Lord lives, which brought up the children of Israel from the lands of the north and all of the various countries that they sojourned in. Meaning there's going to have to be a situation for God's people, for the true Israelites, in their bondage that is so severe and so miraculous in the capacity in which he delivers us, that basically God is going to one-up himself in what he did in ancient Egypt. What people on the planet Earth right now have been going through slavery, one, and such dire straits, and are in such a deep conundrum that the God of the universe has to step in order to save them. That would, in a way in which would eclipse how God saved the Israelites in ancient Egypt. There's only one answer. It's not even an attack necessarily on, well, not necessarily, it's not an attack on Israelis or those people over there. If they want to observe Torah and things of that nature, then, good for them. But they have not gone through the things that the Bible says the true Israelites would go through. And so when we go into this presentation of Greater Israel and Esau reclaiming their birthright, we can see that they're trying to force all of these things, as opposed to us. It just naturally happens with us. So without any further ado, we can continue.
Okay, all praises. Let me get my charger real quick.
All praises to the Most High. So we're getting ready to go into this. This should be a good one, everybody, and especially in light of what's going on in the world right now. We see in Sirach 39, verse 1, it says, but matter of fact, I'm trying to quote it off the top of my head. Let me see if I can just pull it up. Sirach 39 and 1, it says, he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecy. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be occupied in prophecy. Why should we be occupied in prophecy, everybody? Because like the Bible says in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, that history merely repeats itself. There's nothing new under the sun. So if we can, one, look into the past and see what happened then, and also look into the future to see what's getting ready to happen, we can then use that to navigate what should we be doing in this day and age. You see? So let's go ahead.
So I listened to some of it before I got on, and peace and blessings to everybody in the chat. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. All praise to the Most High. And for those of you who will be watching the post recording later, peace, blessings to y'all as well. We're in eschatology. I talked to his side about this yesterday or a couple of days ago. We all talk about how, you know, the angels are over in the area of the Euphrates River, how it's going to dry up to prepare the way for the kings of the east, and how these conflicts and wars will happen in northern Israel, east of Israel, Armageddon in particular. But what is going to trigger it? What is going to trigger Armageddon? What is going to trigger the end-all be-all war that is going to happen in this region? And there's going to be none other than, according to all the data, the biblical data and prophecy, it's more than likely, this is why I made a little reel about this, it's more than likely going to be due to the greater Israel agenda that is going to cause these nations, like Esau said, who are sovereign, they have backing. We see Russia backing Iran. We see China backing Iran. They have backing to pull out a big brother, just like other countries in the area are backed by America and others of NATO. They have big brothers as well. So that, as we see, and as you guys are about to see, why we are saying the greater Israel agenda, this is also Esau reclaiming the birthright. Esau trying to reclaim the birthright. So I'm gonna read some of these aside and you can elaborate. Now, we do have this PDF presentation in the description box, so y'all can download it as we go, except for ours is motion picture. Ours is going to be motion picture. Your guys's will just be the still images, but you'll still have the information. It's good. All right. So make sure you guys download the free PDF so you guys can, you know, sing along with us. So Esau sold his birthright. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob for a single meal, despising the spiritual inheritance that came with it. We all know about this in Genesis 25, 29 to 34, that the birthright was not just material. It included the covenant promises given to Abraham, including the land inheritance passed down through Isaac. So Esau, like a backstabber, like the true Indian giver, it really should be Edomite giver, that will try to give you something and then take it back and finesse you and deceive you. He now wants to get that back through the spirit, inherently, internally. Now, some of these Edomites, of course, know that they are Esau, but some don't. But in their spirit, they are of their father. So they understand that a bartering, a broker, I think it's a barterer, broker, the word I'm looking for, but a deal was made. And now they have the ish end of the stick of the deal, so to speak. And now they're trying to get it back. That's why the title is Reclaiming the Birthright. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, that's why, the slogan of our camp is There and Our Beginning, which directly comes from 2nd Ezra chapter 6. Them, in an attempt to fulfill what it is that belongs to them in their eyes, are under Satan's kingdom, trying to take the kingdom here. But we understand that, like Hebrews 11 says, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we desire a better country wherein is heavenly. They have to try to force militarily, without God's backing, this promised land, whereas God is going to give it to us because it was given to us thousands of years ago.
Right. And the New Testament confirms this, warning against being like Esau, who gave up his birthright and could not recover the blessing afterward. But like Asad said, they're not doing it because, well, it is prophecy, but the Most High is not on a campaign and crusade with them supporting this, even though it's part of his divine providence and prerogative. This is, from our vantage point, this is them trying to make this happen, forcing the prophecy. This shows that the promise, including the land, were transferred to Jacob and his descendants. And now Esau, with this greater Israel agenda, is trying to reclaim the birthright. Let's keep going. So God promised the children of Israel a vast inheritance, stretching from the river of Egypt, often associated with the Nile region, to the Euphrates River, establishing the full extent of their land. Now, I was thinking of something too on the way here, Hassan, when you was breaking it down in Genesis 15. Not only do we get this full land promise predicated on the birthright and inheritance, but we also get some of Esau's land, and we get some of Canaan's land when you read Obadiah 1. So that's even more vast. Then it says, establishing the full extent of the land. This covenant given to Abraham and his descendants, Genesis 15, show that their territory was divinely appointed and far greater than what they historically possessed at any time, at any one time. So one might ask, oh, well, I think I covered this in the, let me see. Oh, I did already. So although God did promise a vast land stretching from the river of Egypt to Euphrates, they never fully possessed it because they did not completely drive out the surrounding nations. So these individuals who are imposters, not registered on the rosters, corny fakers and 48ers, they now are saying, oh, you know, we haven't accomplished that. And we are the people who came into the land 3,500 years ago, and it's our time to do this without the Messiah, with 70% of us being gay and wicked in the land that's supposed to be the Holy Land, and God is going to be with us to fulfill this greater Israel agenda. But their God who's helping them to fulfill this greater Israel agenda is America, Satan. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm trying to find this article from October. Here we go. I don't want to take too much from the presentation, so I'll make this very quick, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
So, like Pri said, the reason why we didn't possess the entire land is because we failed to drive out a lot of the nations that were there. And is it ironic that 3 years ago, right before October 7th, there was a plan that leaked from the Israeli government to expel all Palestinians from Gaza, recommends Israeli government. So it says an intelligence ministry document revealed by local call. It says, shows how the idea of population transfer to the Sinai is reaching official discussions. They were planning. This is not like some conspiracy. This is not some hoopla. The Israeli Ministry of Intelligence is recommending the forcible and permanent transfer of the Gaza Strip's 2.2 million Palestinian residents to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. They're trying to expel over 2 million people out of there. They're trying to kick these people out, either what it says, force militarily. And then ironically, this is the stage that they're trying to set. This is why we say the greater Israel agenda exposed. In October of 2023, they have an agenda that gets leaked where they're trying to forcibly, which would be through military prowess, expel the entire population of Gaza, which is over 2 million people. The following year, there's an attack on October 7th, and they just mysteriously allow these people to come on hang gliders and they invade Israel. No, that sets the grounds for a justification to go and bomb the hell out of Gaza and then ultimately what? Kick them out. Now, as we're getting ready to go into, what's getting ready to happen is they've gone to war with all their enemies. They're going to defeat them, overcome them, and take their territory. This is what we are seeing right now. This is clearly what we are seeing right now. And they're almost announcing it to you. They're not making it as, when they talk about things that are hidden in plain sight. So I'll continue reading this article. It says, the 10-page document dated October 13th, 2023, bears the logo of the Intelligence Ministry, a small governmental body that produces policy research and shares its proposals with intelligence agencies. The Army and other ministries It assesses 3 options regarding the future of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in the framework of the current war. It recommends a full population transfer. It recommends a full population transfer, all 2.2 million people, as its preferred course of action. It also calls on Israel to enlist the international community in support of this endeavor. They think, well, this shows you how much power they have, that they believe that in their minds, they can call on the nations of the world to assist them in forcibly expelling 2.2 million Palestinians out of their homes.
Wow. Well, the nerve, the caucasity. And we know the worst of the heathen, who are the worst of the heathen, that's those who assimilated our land when you read Ezekiel chapter 7. So let's keep going. Let's keep going. So we're now going to examine how the bloodline Israelites were expelled from the land in 70 AD. And again, after 135 AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt, marking a major turning point in history. From there, I want you guys to listen close. We'll explore the rise of the later inhabitants, Edomites from Esau. I know we got new viewers on this channel who don't believe Esau are the Caucasians, and that's fine. But when you look at all the history, archaeology, and more importantly, prophecy, it all points to one group of people. And how control of the land shifted over time, with Esau trying to reclaim the birthright that he sold to Jacob, which includes the promised land. Finally, we'll connect this to modern events in the Middle East, like the articles Hassad just read. We have more, where Israel's expansion and ongoing conflict as an attempt to fulfill ancient promises and reclaim a lost birthright, viewing it through the lens of both history and biblical prophecy. Now, 70 AD, Israelites expelled from their own land. We looked at this as the end of the world. And where do we find this? Historical sources, 70 AD, about the expulsion. Flavius Josephus. He's a primary eyewitness historian of the war. In the book, The Jewish Wars, key points is he describes Jerusalem being destroyed by the Romans under Titus, massive unalivings, captivity, graping, you know, the white man doing what he is naturally designed to do, by and large and generally speaking, because the Bible does call them the wicked, Edom. Survivors scattered and sold into slavery. We see that. We see other sources such as Tacitus. Tacitus confirms the destruction and dispersion, mentions widespread devastation of Judah. Bible verses foretold the events. Luke 21, 20 to 24, direct prophecy of 70 AD. When you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations. Now, some Christians say, well, 70 AD wasn't a curse wasn't the curses of Deuteronomy because Jesus prophesied about it. Well, the Messiah understood the prophecies, knew the prophecies, understood the law, understood the old covenant, understood the curses. Where is he drawing from? How did he know? Because it's mentioned in Deuteronomy 28 and 64. And not only that, the curses are cyclical. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth to the other. That was foretold of 70 AD. And not only that, and then Hassad, I'll give it to you. Mm-hmm. After the Bar Kokhba revolt, so 70 AD, a lot of Israelites think that we was all scattered, was that not any remained after 70 AD. But some of us remained until 135 with the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Romans under Emperor Hadrian crushed their uprising, devastated Judea, and killed or displaced large numbers of Jews. Hadrian then renamed the land Syria Palestina and rebuilt Jerusalem as Aelia Capitolina, issuing decrees that barred Jews from entering the city effectively, enforcing their expulsion and deepening the diaspora. So I want everybody to understand something. In 135 AD, after that, Rome was tired of us revolting. So an edict went out that we could no longer come back into the land. This is important because this is going to start the reclaiming of the birthright. And then later on, you know, a millennium and a half later, you'll see them start the process of the attempt of greater Israel. All right. So you want to speak on something?
No, it's fine. We can keep going.
Okay. You want to go from here?
Sure. So when did Edomites start converting to Judaism in an attempt to reclaim their birthright? Because that's, you know, kind of the $1,000,000 question. Okay, if these people are not Israelites, when did they start to identify themselves as Israelites? Why did they start to identify themselves as Israelites? How, etc. So it says the Herodian line traces back to the forced conversion of the Idumeans or Edomites to Judaism during the Hasmonean period, which is around 125 BC. Under John Hyrcanus. He compelled the Idumeans to be circumcised and adopt Jewish customs, bringing them into the nation. This is what happens right after the time of the Maccabees. There was a forceful conversion of a bunch of Edomites. By the time of Herod the Great, who reigned from 37 to 4 BC, this Edomite descendant family had risen to power under Roman authority, ruling over Judea despite their relatively recent conversion and non-Israelite origin. Herod, for example, Herod the Great. Well, that's what we just got done reading. Herod is not an Israelite. But guess what? His matrilineage, those are Israelites. He has his father's people, they have converted to Judaism, so to speak. And you couple that with his mother being an Israelite, then you can see how the grounds for this start to begin. And Josephus, matter of fact, I believe it's Josephus, maybe it's Philo, gives an account of when the king is in the synagogue and he's reading. When Herod's in the synagogue and he's reading.
Yeah, Philo, yep.
Philo is reading, and he gives an account of Herod reading Deuteronomy chapter 17, which says, "You shall not set a foreigner over you to be king." And it says Herod starts weeping. But then the Jews, our people, were like, "No, you are our brother." So it's a combination of these people converting and then us essentially welcoming these people in.
Right.
And now they get to essentially usurp our position. Now, somebody might take that in a soundbite and say, that's exactly what you guys are trying to do right now. Well, no, certainly we can see examples of people joining amongst us, being grafted in and not usurping. But these people clearly had a false motive, and that's why they were allowed to do what they did.
Yeah, so what happened was with the Maccabees forced them. So naturally, if you force somebody into your religion, they're not going to really believe. They'll be more likely to snake you. But those who do it on their own recognizance, then those are sincere cleavers, sincere proselytes, according to history, archaeology, and Bible. So then we have, you can finish.
Okay. So now this is probably the most important part. It says the Colonimus family. When you guys get off of here, make sure you guys do some research on the Colonimus family. Everything that we tell you guys, we want you to go and fact check, research it for yourself. The Colonimus family traces its name back to the Greek name Colonimus, meaning good name. It says, which is closely related to the name associated with Onkelos. Jewish tradition links Onkelos, often identified as a convert of noble Roman background, meaning a Gentile. He's a convert. This is a Gentile convert with the same name root, suggesting a wow, I cannot pronounce that word. Continuity. Yes. Continuity of naming that later appears in prominent families like the Colonimus lineage in medieval Europe. So essentially, we have a family, the Colonimus family, who convert to Judaism
in the first century.
And that, according to, are you going to get Dr. Henry Abramson after this?
No.
Well,
but you can quote him.
Yeah, he calls the conversion of the Colonimus family the bottleneck event of essentially modern Jewry.
Mm-hmm.
In that most modern, at least Ashkenazi Jews, can trace their lineage and their history back to this event, back to this family of non-Israelites, Gentiles who converted to Judaism.
Mm-hmm. Several prophecies describe Israel being scattered and losing their national identity among the nations. So while we are being scattered and losing our identity, they still preserved. This is what it says right here. You can see some of these verses about being scattered and losing our identity, while still being preserved for future restoration. True. At the same time, history shows that others would attach themselves to Israel's customs and identity, continuing those traditions over time. Because you say, all right, well, why do these Jewish people today believe that greater Israel is for them? Some of them truly believe that they are bloodline descendants. Why? Because they have historical and linguistic continuity for so many centuries. They're like, wait a second, we've been speaking Hebrew, we've been saying we're Israel, we've been in the land or in that area, so we got to be the people. Then there are some who say, no, we can't take a DNA test. DNA tests are illegal. We're not bloodline descendants. This is just a state, not a land promise. So some do confess and admit that, some don't. But this is very important when we go into the greater Israel agenda. Yeah. We have the Herodian convert. We have the Maccabees forcing Edomites to convert. That in turn, and result to that, the Herodians convert. And result to that, the Kalanimus family converts. And that's responsible, like Assad said, the genetic bottleneck for most of modern day Jewry. There goes that word again.
And think about this. You have to ask yourselves, everybody, why is it because a lot of these, and this is not a conspiracy, nor is this an attack on anybody, but this is just objectively speaking. It is true that I won't say all, I won't even say most, a fair amount and an overrepresentation amount of DNA companies are owned by people who identify as Jewish. Now, if DNA evidence was sufficient evidence to substantiate if someone was an Israelite, why wouldn't they use that to their advantage and say, hey, we have genetic markers going back to this place? Now, you'll have some studies that will say, actually, you know what you're talking about? We do. 20% of Ashkenazi Jews have the J2 marker that ties back to Aaron. Yeah, good luck proving that. Good luck proving that, getting Aaron's body to take his, autosomal DNA or find out what his haplogroup is. But why would they then say it's illegal or you have to go through all type of procedure to get a DNA test in Israel? Well, the indication, of course, is that they're guilty in so much as to say they know that they're not. They don't want that information to get out, because if it does, then how do they justify them occupying this territory? There are billions of dollars, specifically from the United States of America. There's a brother in our camp, matter of fact. Well, the brother used to be in our camp. Much love to the brother, but he let me know, I used to send money to Israel every year, like every month, because I thought those were the people. Now, what happens to that money when they find out that they're not the people? Huh? How do they then justify that state? But anyway, the three Aliyahs.
Yeah, the three Aliyahs. This is probably the foundation of the greater Israel agenda, because they have to get to the land. They have to get to the land in order to establish themselves and then push for expansion. So you could go ahead from here.
Yep. So the three Aliyahs refers to waves of Jewish migration to the land of Israel, rooted in the idea of returning to their homelands. In modern history, these began with the first Aliyah, which started in 1882, ended in 1903, followed by multiple later waves where thousands of settlers came, mainly from Europe and Yemen, to establish agricultural communities and lay the foundation for a national revival. The language Hebrew, once primarily used in scripture and liturgy, was revived as a spoken everyday language during the same period, especially through the efforts of Eliezer ben Yehuda. Together, the Aliyahs and the revival of Hebrew played a central role in shaping modern Israeli identity, culture, and statehood.
So it wasn't just like certain Israelites believe that the Caucasian Jewish man, a lot of Israelites believe that they only got there in 1948. That's not true. That's when it was a political move. But before that, like you see these Aliyahs, you see them starting to move there in the late 1800s, 1882 to 1903. That was the first wave. You understand? So this is very important, everybody. There's three Aliyahs, 1, 2, and 3. All right. Let's keep going. Go ahead.
It says the Aliyahs unfolded in successive waves of migration, with groups of Jews returning to the land, establishing settlements, farming communities, and rebuilding a national presence. Now, there's something I don't want to jump the gun. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure you're going to go into it. Think about this though. I'll give light of this. When and by who does the Bible say the true Israelites will return to their land? And think about this: what took place in the late 19th century with these people so-called resettling their land. Let's keep going though.
Oh, for the record, this PDF presentation is free. Remember who did it first? Genesis was giving y'all these free presentation breakdowns. It is in the description box, so download it. You get, like I said, you guys won't have the motion picture, but you'll have the still images and all the information. All right, all praise to the Most High. That is in the description box. Download that so you can have that. Go ahead.
It says these waves of Aliyah steadily increased the Jewish population in the lands, building communities, infrastructure, and shared a national identity. As tensions grew under British rule, because it was first called, I think, British Palestine. It says, as tensions grew under British rule and global events like World War II accelerated the push for a homeland, international support culminated in the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, marking a major turning point in modern history. That's very important. Why the year 1948? Well, what does 1948 immediately follow? It immediately follows World War II. What took place during World War II? I don't need to use certain words for the sake of this video not getting taken down. But I can certainly say, and everyone would agree, that there was a large persecution of the people who refer to themselves as Jewish throughout the world, especially throughout throughout Europe. And so they then said, hey, look, we need a safe place for us to live. And then the West said, you know what? You're right. Let's give you guys a portion of this territory right here.
Which is Bible, which is part of prophecy. Joel chapter 3, verse 2 says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. The Most High is sore displeased with the heathen when they, one, call themselves Israelites and they're not, and two, when they occupy our land when it is not theirs, trying to reclaim the birthright. Esau. All praises, y'all. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. We're going to keep going. Okay, so this is what the Lord is up. This right here is none other. This prophecy is none other than a condemnation of 1948. A condemnation for 1948. Because again, the first Aliyah, the second Aliyah, the third Aliyah, okay, they're moving back in waves. But then the nations gathered together in the 48 to agree by law that our land is now legally the being owned by two different groups of heathens.
Yeah.
One being the Arabs, which they're saying, oh, we're Palestine. We're Palestinians. But the word Palestinian is just a Greek transliteration of Philistine, which are Hamites.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I think that's noteworthy, Priest. We got to start using the talking point more. Yeah. And I want everybody to understand what I mean by this. So, family, y'all that are listening, when people try to say it's such a, oh, you're telling me that the Israelites are just calling themselves that? Well, the Palestinians are calling themselves Philistines. Are they Philistines? No. Oh, okay. So why is it far-fetched for another group of people right next door to be calling themselves a people who they're not?
You gotta pay fair. All fair business. Shout out Crip Mac. No, but but I'm saying it got to be fair. It got to be logical. We can't have double standards. All right. So now they finally reclaim the birthright, as they think. 1948. Yeah, yes, we did it. Now, I didn't even put on here what happened in 1918. I didn't even put what happened in 1918 with the oh man. Oh, I forgot I forgot the word, what they did, what the word that they did, what they called it. But in 1918, that was a play to set up 1948. There we go. That's what I'm thinking about. The Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration. So that's a play to set up 1948. And then, wouldn't you know, World War I started at that time. So the Bible prophesied that they would do this. The Bible tells us that Esau would assume our identity and our land. I see somebody posted Ezekiel 36, but I was looking for, even though that's a good precept, I'm looking for Ezekiel 36. Well, I guess I'm jumping the gun, but we're going to get to Ezekiel 36 because it mentions who is going to take our land and our identity by name. So you can bring this out aside. We're just going into how the Bible is so specific about who would have our land, possess our land, what their Gentile heathen identity would be, how they and who would take our identity. So go ahead.
This is Revelation 2:9. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. That's
A lot of Israelites think that's for that applies to Amalek today, the people over there in Israel today, but this has first century initial fulfillment. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. During the first century, we had individuals such as the Herodians, Drusilla in particular, in the book of Acts is referred to as a Jewess. And yet to be a Jew means to be a descendant of, of course, Judah or one of the people of Judah, right? To be an Israelite, essentially. So they're saying they are Jews and are not, but they're the synagogue of Satan. Look at the Herodians' works. Look at the Herodian dynasty. They unalived John the Baptist. They unalived James the Apostle. They persecuted the early church. So these are not, this is certainly works that would be, belonging to the adversary, the enemy. We can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bible identifies by name the Gentile nation that would occupy the land of Israel in the stead of the true Israelites. So let's see who it says. Ezekiel 36:5. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, surely I have spoken in my hot jealousy against the rest of the nations and against all Edom, who gave my land to themselves as a possession, with wholehearted joy and utter contempt, that they might make its pasture lands a prey. This is clearly what we're seeing going on right now. The Edomites control the land of Israel. And notice it uses them, it highlights Esau because they're the main people that occupy that land. There's other nations. That's why it says, and the rest of the nations, and against all Edom, who gave my land to themselves as a possession. So who are the primary occupiers of the lands? And one could essentially say the culture and customs and identity of the people of Israel, the Edomites are.
Mentions it by name. What a God we serve. What a great power we serve. This. See, like I said, we got a few new people on this TGC Ministries channel who defer and argue against who the Edomites are. I know on Facebook when I shared this thumbnail for this video, this live stream today, and make sure you guys download that free PDF to this presentation in the chat. It's in the description box. And you guys are asking questions. Brother said he got a question in the chat. Just wait a second. But a lot of y'all are adverse to believing and coming to the understanding of who Esau really is. We can open up the chat in the panel for questions, comments, and smoke on this. Who are the Edomites today after we get done with this presentation? Because we just need to know, the Bible says our last captivity would be under them. They would be the last ruling power of the world. They would occupy our land. And we got some archaeology and some sources and history. So we just got to be, unbiased here and intellectually responsible with the information. Leave at 6. All right. All right. So Luke 21 and 24, you guys should know this like the back of your hand. We present this all the time to the Jewish community, even if they don't believe in the New Testament. Luke 21 and 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations. Led away captive into all nations. This means how we got to all nations, the so-called African Latino diaspora, we got there on cargo slave ships. They got there on some type of airline and set up businesses and became, doctors, very skilled at certain trades, and lawyers, and developed and established, economic power and opulence. That's how they got to all nations. We got to all nations through a forced migration.
Yeah.
And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Gentiles occupy the land of Israel until the end of time, according to the book.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
The words directly from Christ. And this is one of the most important verses in terms of proving who the Israelites are. Now, there's debate about what the times of the Gentiles are. Famously, Dr. Michael Brown said the times of the Gentiles was, I believe, until 1948, until the Israelites or the Jews started to return back to the land. But the issue with that is that's just not what the Bible says concerning the time of the Gentiles. Where do we see the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled in the Bible? First of all, we have to identify what are the times of the Gentiles. And in order to do so, let me pull up Luke 21 and verse 24 so we can all kind of go through this together.
Professor, you are one rude person. He wants us to stop the presentation to do a breakdown on how Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are Israelites. Brother, you're going to have to just chill out. Take a chill pill, my man.
So when you look at that word for time, here's the Greek word kahiros. I would have thought it would have been eon, but that's fine. The point is the definitions. It says due measure, a measure of time, a larger or smaller portion of time. This is important right here, a fixed and definite time. The time when things are brought to crisis or the decisive epoch waited for. It's a fixed and definite time of who? Of the Gentiles. What does it mean, the time, the fixed time of the Gentiles? If it's fixed, that means there's only so much time that's been allotted to them. And we see in Daniel chapter 7, let me read this real quick. Daniel 7, and just to kind of, for anybody that's not familiar, in Daniel 7, Daniel has a dream where he sees 4 beasts. And the very next chapter explains away the first beast being the Babylonians and the Syrians, the second beast being the Persians and the Medes, third beast being the Greeks. The fourth beast is not named in Daniel, but then later in Revelation, we see that this fourth beast has 7 heads, 10 horns, just like in Daniel, and it tried to unalive the Messiah as soon as he was born. Well, who did that? The Romans. So the Romans are the fourth and final beast in the book of Daniel. Now, why that matters is, in Daniel 7 and 21, it says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. So this horn is a horn that comes out of the fourth beast. And so just like horns come out of animals, nations come out of other nations. So this is the United States of America. This is Babylon. It sprang out of the Roman Empire. I beheld, in the same horn, the same nation made war with the saints and prevailed against them.
Share your screen.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. And I think this is also important before we even get to the next verse. If we identify and if we can know that the fourth beast, that America is directly tied to the fourth beast, and it in fact is the little horn that we're reading about in Daniel 7, or also the whore in Revelation, take a note of this, everybody. It says that this horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Did the United States of America make war against the state of Israel? Did the United States of America make war against Jewish people? No, as a matter of fact, when there was an actual war going on against Jewish people, which, hey, that was wrong. Okay. That was a terrible, horrible thing that happened in human history. But when that did take place, the United States of America liberated those people from Auschwitz, from other camps, and hey, they didn't belong there. That was a horrible thing that took place, like I said. I'm not just saying that facetiously. It's not good for what the evil mustache man said or did. But anyway, it says that this horn made war with the saints. Who would be the saints? Contextually, this would be the children of Israel right here. Now, amongst the children of Israel, there'll be Gentiles who are joined and grafted in, but there's still an initial context with that being said. And prevailed against them until. So the little horn, which is the culmination of the fourth beast power, prevailed against the people of Israel until the Ancient of Days came. Who's the Ancient of Days? God, the Father. And judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. That, my friends, is when the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. That's what Daniel 7 is. Daniel 7 is the times of the Gentiles. The statue in Daniel chapter 2, put a 1 in the chat if you're familiar with the statue in Daniel chapter 2. When Nebuchadnezzar has that dream, and there's a statue that starts with gold, then it goes to silver, then it goes to bronze and clay feet. That's the time of the Gentiles. And then, of course, the stone comes out and destroys the statue on its foot. So what is this? So let's go back to this. If we know that that's the case, meaning the Messiah is the stone in Daniel chapter 2. So the Messiah would be partially responsible for destroying the fourth beast. That's the culmination of the end of the times of the Gentiles. But right here in Luke 21 and 24, it says that Israel will be occupied by its enemies, by the enemies of Israel until that takes place. Well, the Messiah is clearly not here on earth yet. So that means the people in the land of Israel are not the true Israelites, because the true Israelites don't return to their land until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled.
Bars. It's so much. It's just so easy to prove who we are and who the people of the book are and who are not the people of the book.
And I want to just say one thing too. It's ironic that at this very moment, the United States of America, the most powerful empire the world's ever seen, the empire which is supposed to be oppressing the true Israelites, is literally fighting a joint war with Israel right now.
Where's that in prophecy?
That's literally happening right now. They're bombing Persia right now.
Wow. Where is it in prophecy that Israel would be a world power in the end time? That means they don't need a Messiah. Netanyahu talking about we're going to reach the age of the Messiah and the kingdom. That's Trump. Trump is your Messiah. America's your Messiah. America's your God. I mean, if you can't see it, then GF.
Whoa. All right.
Okay. So greater Israel agenda. I think you wanted to harp in on some of these points as well. Mm-hmm. So greater Israel agenda, right? So now we get to 1948. I was trying to go in chronological order. Now that they are established in the land and they see themselves as the rightful heirs, reclaiming the birthright, Esau, the focus shifts towards securing and expanding their position. As the modern expansion and conflict in the region as efforts to fulfill ancient land promises through human action rather than divine intervention. What does that mean? That might be a typo, but what am I saying here? They're trying to expand, as Hassad mentioned earlier, with the intro to the presentation, and that means that they have to conquer these surrounding areas. This is not divine intervention. Again, does the Most High God ordain and predestine everything? Yes. But is he like, I'm fighting for you, I'm doing this because of me and my name, it's my right arm bringing salvation? No. This is all human action and human effort in an attempt to, like I said, reclaim the birthright and the process of Greater Israel. So with Netanyahu framing current events as part of a larger prophetic narrative, Greater Israel, where does he do this at? But before we show this, I'm going to bring up some articles. Again, walk with me, y'all. The idea of Greater Israel refers to an interpretation of biblical boundaries, if you're coming in late, like Genesis 15 and 18, from the Nile to the Euphrates. That's what we were promised. Or to modern political proposals about expanded borders. But it's not an official policy of the state of Israel, and different groups define it very differently. So they're going to try to play a game. They're going to try to say, no, we just want our original borders from 48, but what they're really doing is saying this is Genesis 15 and 18. So they mask it and try to say it's just we want to protect what's already ours. They're infringing on our landmarks. No, they're trying to expand, and we're going to show you the records of every nation that they got into conflict with are nations that are within the borders of Greater Israel.
Yep, exactly.
So this is what he says, and then I'll give it to you.
That's crazy. I literally have that video pulled up.
You do?
Yeah.
You can play it. I'll read it and you can play it. So Netanyahu, this is from August 12, 2025. Netanyahu says he's on a historic and spiritual mission. Imagine that. He's an atheist. He's not keeping Torah. So he's on a spiritual mission. Also feels a connection to vision of Greater Israel. We're going to play the video. Then back 2 years ago, he says Netanyahu brandishes a map of Israel that includes West Bank and Gaza at UN speech. They're literally telling us what they're going to do before they do it, right in plain sight.
Yep.
You wanted to go? I'm going to read this and I'll give it to you. Mm-hmm. In practical, real-world terms, the land discussed in those ideas overlaps with existing populations in sovereign countries, included Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, as well as parts of neighboring states like Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt. That would be Greater Israel. So any attempt to expand in that sense would involve complex geopolitical conflict, not a simple or unified plan to remove any one group. So this is why we say Greater Israel is more than likely, that agenda is more than likely going to cause World War III. Because the Bible says World War III is happening in northern Israel, Armageddon. So go ahead, brother.
All right. So let me play that clip real quick. I think this is super important. So let me share my screen. Let's share this one first. So in that very interview that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had, he says this. Watch this. He says we're on a mission for generations. There are generations of Jews.
יש דורות של יהודים שחלמו שנגיע לכאן, ויש דורות של יהודים שיבואו אחרינו. אז אתה שואל אם אני מרגיש שאני בשליחות היסטורית?
He said he's on a historical, like we just read, a historical and spiritual mission. Watch this.
ורוחנית, התשובה היא כן.
אני לא רוצה לסבך אותך לסיום עם תיק 6000, אבל
מה זה?
זה הוויז'ן שלי, זה אחד הדברים שחלמתי עליהם.
So now the interviewer says he's going to give him a gift. He says his vision, one of the things he's dreamed about is a beautiful map
מפת הארץ המובטחת.
of the promised land.
יפה.
הגיע הזמן.
Did you peep what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said? He said, it's time. This is a couple years ago. It's time.
קוראים לזה ירושלם. אני לא נותן את זה לך, אני מעניק את זה לך כדי שתיתן זה לארצך שרה.
תודה רבה.
אתה מתחבר לחזון?
He said, do you connect with the vision of Greater Israel, the promised lands?
מאוד.
Very much.
באמת?
Really?
מאוד.
Very much.
זה ישראל השלמה.
He tells this is Greater Israel. You know what you're saying, right? So let's go to the rest of the clip.
מפת הארץ המובטחת.
זה אני רואה כמשימה גדולה. מה זה?
זה הוויז'ן שלי, זה אחד הדברים שחלמתי עליהם. מפת הארץ המובטחת.
יפה.
הגיע הזמן, קוראים לזה ירושלם. אני לא נותן את זה לך, אני מעניק את זה לך כדי שתיתן זה לארצך שרה.
תודה רבה.
אתה מתחבר לחזון?
מאוד.
באמת?
מאוד.
לישראל השלמה.
אם אתה שואל אותי, אנחנו כאן, אתה יודע, הרבה פעמים מזכיר את אבא שלי. הדור של ההורים שלי היה צריך להקים את המדינה.
Excuse me, this is from 7 months ago. Sorry, this is not from 2 years ago. This is from 7 months ago. What month was it? When was this uploaded? Now, this could be a hunch. Let's see. What date was this uploaded? August 14th, 2025. Let me double check something. Let me double check. What did they call the operation last year? Was it something Hammer?
Yeah, something Hammer. Hammer time. MC Hammer. BB Hammer.
That was last year, June. Okay, so this is, it was called Midnight Hammer, June 21st. So a couple months removed from that.
והדור שלנו, הדור שלי, צריך להבטיח את המשך קיומה. וזה אני רואה כמשימה גדולה.
He sees it as a great mission. He literally just said that it's time and he's trying to make greater Israel happen. That's not a conspiracy, everybody. That's literally what he just said. How do we get us back on here? Hold on. All right. So now with that, I want to play a clip. I was going to try to just break it down myself, which I could, but I think this is a good clip to kind of explain everything that was going on over there. Let me see if I can find this. Give me one moment, everyone, to pull this up.
Matter of fact, you know what? I can finish this and then I'll give it. There's only 2 more slides. And again, y'all can get this presentation for free in the PDF in the description box, right? I'm gonna give it right back to you. Let's just finish these couple of slides. Greater Israel is the reason there will never be peace in the Middle East. This is just a fact, y'all. Greater Israel is the reason there will never be peace in the Middle East. It'll be endless conflict. Because without God's divine intervention to fulfill this prophecy, it's impossible to remove all these nations to gain the total geographic promised land. The Bible foretells this also in prophecy, that there will never be peace in the Middle East due to them trying to accomplish greater Israel. Isaiah 60:18. Violence shall no more be heard in your land. Devastation or destruction within your borders. You shall call your walls salvation and your gates praise. So there will all, according to prophecy and many other verses like this, there will always be conflict in the Middle East because of the greater Israel agenda, right? So based on the trajectory of the greater Israel agenda, one could argue, and I believe it's a solid argument, and I would take this position, that one could argue it makes a large-scale global conflict or World War III far more likely, especially with tension centered in the same region described in Revelation 16. If events continue in this direction, it aligns with the expectation of nations being drawn into the area to back up either Israel or whatever nation Israel is trying to remove, setting the stage for what some identify as Armageddon, which is northern Israel. So there will never be peace in the Middle East with the greater Israel agenda until the true Israelites get back to the land. And the greater Israel agenda will more than likely be what causes World War III. And as we see right now, why is America involved? Because of Israel and Gaza. Why is America involved? Because of Israel and Iran.
Yep.
Now, Russia, Putin just gave a speech yesterday or the day before. So this is what this is what the Bible is telling us. Again, a lot of Israelites, and I'm not throwing no shade in anybody because knowledge increases as we approach the eschaton.
Yep.
We always talked about the Battle of Armageddon and how everything is happening in the Middle East, but we never tied it to the greater Israel agenda. So go ahead, I'll give it back to you. All praise to the Most High. That's the end of the presentation. We're going to go into some articles, go into some more prophecy, then we'll open up for questions, comments, and smoke.
All right, I'm going to play this little video right here. I won't play the entire thing. This is Nick Fuentes. Now, he's notorious. People say he's anti this, he's racist, he's a bigot, and there's a lot of things that he says that I certainly wouldn't agree to, but he's 100% accurate when on this take. And he gives a lot of really good political commentary, especially as it relates to what's going on in the Middle East. So wanted to give that preface real quick. So let's take a listen.
They have a new doctrine. It's promulgated by Oded Yinon. They say the new doctrine of the state of Israel is we have to destroy all of our enemies. Oded Yinon's plan for the 1980s says the only way that Israel can be safe is if we destroy all of our neighbors. It says that even though our neighbors are strong militarily and our borders are under threat, he says our neighbors are actually weak because they're based on diversity. Oded Yinon says that Lebanon has 5 different nations inside of it. It has a Christian nation, a Shiite nation, a Druze nation, all kinds of different ethnicities living inside. It says Syria has Alawites in the west, Sunnis everywhere else, Druze in the south. It says that Egypt has a big Coptic Christian population, a big Muslim population. It says that Iraq has the Kurds and the Sunnis and the Shiites. Iran has a lot of Turks and Persians and other groups living inside of it. So in the late 1970s, when the Likud party comes to power after the failures of the left-wing party to anticipate the surprise attack, they say it's time to go on the offensive and blow up all these different countries. In 1978, Israel brokers a peace agreement with Egypt. Israel gives them the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt signs a treaty with Israel. Egypt becomes the first country to normalize relations with Israel. And that is the year, by the way, that Egypt becomes one of the biggest recipients of U.S. foreign aid. And so does Israel. 1978 is the Camp David Accords. They make this treaty. It's ratified in 79. It's in that year that Israel becomes the number 1 recipient of foreign aid. Egypt becomes number 2.
How ironic is that? The same year in which Israel and Egypt reach an agreement, a peace treaty, Egypt becomes the number 2 recipient in U.S. foreign aid. How crazy is that? Let's continue.
And they both receive massive amounts of money to make this deal. In 1978, Israel goes to war in Lebanon. In 1979, there is an Islamic revolution in Iran. The Ayatollah and the Green Revolution, the Islamic Revolution, overthrows the Shah. They hold the Americans hostage in the embassy, and they declare a revolutionary Shiite caliphate.
Let's go, Nick.
Are perturbed by this. In 1982, they invade Lebanon because Palestinians keep doing cross-border raids in Israel. Israel invades Lebanon as part of their strategy to go on the offensive. When they invade Lebanon, Iran comes all the way over and starts training up Lebanese militias, Shiite militias in the south. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the guarantor of the revolution, comes to Lebanon and starts training them up. That becomes Hezbollah. In 1981, Iraq is developing a nuclear weapon. They get a reactor from France. They start building up a nuclear weapons program. In 1981, Israel launches a strike on it. They bomb the reactor. Iraq and Iran begin a 10-year war in the 1980s. Israel and the United States back both sides. Israel predominantly backs Iran because they view Saddam Hussein in Iraq as the bigger threat, because he's developing a nuclear weapon. In 1990, Iraq invades Kuwait. Iraq threatens to invade Saudi Arabia. It launches missiles at Israel. George Bush invades Iraq, and he does not topple the government of Saddam Hussein. He oversees the destruction of their nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons programs. He demilitarizes Iraq, its missiles, its navy, but he leaves the regime intact. In response to this, Israel almost kills George Bush because Israel wants the United States to topple the Saddam Hussein regime. 1994, Israel makes peace with Jordan. Jordan becomes the second country to normalize relations with Israel. Jordan becomes the 3rd largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid. In 1996, a new doctrine is put out. This one is by Richard Pearl, Douglas Faith, David Wormser. And this is coordinated by the Bibi Netanyahu government in Israel. They call it the Clean Break Memo. They say that for too long, the Israeli government is not right-wing enough. They say even though we're on the offensive, they say we're still not safe. They say we gave up the Sinai Peninsula for peace with Egypt. They said we gave up the West Bank for peace with Jordan. They say we don't want to give up Golan for peace with Syria. We can't keep giving up land in exchange for peace with the Palestinians and our neighbors. They say, so we need a clean break with the past. And in order to secure our northern border, because Egypt and Jordan are already taken care of, they say we need to knock out Saddam Hussein in Iraq, we need to take out Syria, and then we need to take out Iran. We need to take out Iraq because Saddam Hussein is too belligerent. We need to take out Syria because they remain fundamentally at war with us and challenging us. And we need to take out Iran because they have trained up Hezbollah in Lebanon and they're sponsoring some of our adversaries.
So you notice, real quick before we continue, Israel's at war with every single one of these neighboring countries. And ironically, every single one of said neighboring countries has at least a portion of their land that would be a part of Greater Israel. How is it like, okay, let me be very careful how I say this. Let me be very careful how I say this. Though a lot of these Arab countries have been fighting each other for a very long time. So I'm not going to act as if everything was just roses and tulips and gumdrops until big bad Israel came over here. But there is something to say that the moment they move in, now there's this hostility from literally everybody. Now, does that play into Muslim theology and their relationship between how they view the Jews and what the Quran says about the Jews? Certainly that's something to take into consideration. But it is interesting and I think noteworthy that Israel moves to this location and everyone is just united against them. It's interesting.
2003, the Israelis that drafted that report come into the George W. Bush administration. After 9/11, they fabricate intelligence that Saddam Hussein was involved in 9/11 and other terrorist plots. They say that Saddam Hussein is once again building up his nuclear arsenal like they did in 91. Their program, which was not fully destroyed in 1990, they claim, we need to go in. The United States invades Iraq and topples the government. But Israel wants more. Israel wants us to invade every country. In 2003, Libya voluntarily denuclearizes. Libya sees what has happened to Iraq. Libya makes an agreement with the United States. We'll give up our nuclear program. You can inspect it. Just don't invade us.
I want to show you guys another clip. This is extremely interesting. Now, he made mention that in the early 2000s that it was Israel who was positing that Saddam Hussein was creating weapons of mass destruction, in particular like nuclear bombs. Similar to how Israel was positing that Khamenei and the Iranian regime was at 98% enriched uranium. And that, remember the clip we played a couple days ago, matter of fact, where there's clips from 1996 of Benjamin Netanyahu saying they're 2 weeks away from a nuclear bomb. They're 5 days away from a nuclear bomb. They're 467 seconds away from a nuclear bomb. And just like with Iran, look what Israel said about Saddam Hussein. Oh, don't give me an ad, please.
Join all the high-octane metal crunching fun at the good.
Oh, the anticlimactic ad. Give me 1 second, everybody. Hold on.
Yeah, bumper cars. Real life bumper cars. I ain't gonna lie, that look fun though. We gotta do that.
Modern enterprise.
What?
There's a lot of moving parts.
Another one back to back.
Hold on.
You gotta have to pull this up on YouTube.
Comcast Business helps you orchestrate it all. With AI-powered
Okay, mute it though.
I'm trying to mute it. It's not letting me.
optimizing traffic.
Okay, I'm gonna just
Israel, this is Israel's fault. No, I'm kidding.
Just go ahead and play it. We'll play it until all right, they're playing.
Been trying to do for a very long time is build a conventional weapons capability as a shield where it can hide behind.
So this is Marco Rubio. He's saying that Iran is trying to build a nuclear weapon.
Meaning there would come a point where they have so many conventional missiles, so many drones, and it can inflict so much damage that no one can do anything or their nuclear.
Let's get to what Bibi Netanyahu says. Don't tell me that this is just Marco Rubio the whole time. Where's Netanyahu?
I seen it on the screen.
Okay. They're trying to shut this one down. This clip right here. This is what I need to see.
Just what the mayor.
They're trying to shut that down.
Hold on. We're going to try this one more time. All right.
There is no question whatsoever.
Okay.
It's a question of a realistic assessment of a threat, a palpable threat to our common civilization. There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately.
So he says in the early 2000s, Saddam Hussein is trying to get a nuclear bomb. What does the United States do? Well, of course, we have the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. And then Saddam Hussein, he's unalived and his regime is toppled. So basically, Israel says, hey, America, they're gonna hurt us and you. The United States says, hold on, we can't allow that to happen. And they step in and they go take care of Israel's business, basically. Fast forward 20 years later, Iran's developing a nuclear bomb. Hey, are you guys going to let them mess with us like that? No. So now there's a bombing of Iran and their head of state is unalived. Their next head of state is looking like he's in bad condition, and who knows about the rest of his cabinet. It's the same game plan over and over and over again. So I wanted to show that, and then let's get back to this.
In 2006, Netanyahu is calling for war in Iran, for war in Syria. In 2007, Israel bombs Syria's nuclear program because they believe they're getting a weapon. In 2011, the Arab Spring starts in Tunisia. Pro-democracy, pro-liberal protests. They spread all across northern Africa. They spread into Libya, to Egypt, then into Syria and elsewhere in the broader Middle East. They bring down Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. He's replaced by the Muslim Brotherhood. They threatened to topple Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. NATO airstrikes led by the United States finish the job. They topple Libya's government. They kill Muammar Gaddafi.
That's the infamous clip of, let me see if I can find this. Hillary Clinton.
And you guys got to understand why we're even here. We're listing all the conflicts to show that all their conflicts is about greater Israel.
Yep.
That's the point.
So this is he made mention of Libya and Gaddafi. So look what Hillary Clinton had to say about that. Is she like, hey man, he's a horrible person? Are they remorseful about any of this? Let's see what they had to say.
So I mean, that is the land of unconfirmed.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Did it have anything to do with your visit?
No. Oh.
It's just like unaliving people, and especially he made mention that Libya volunteered. They said, hey, we're not going to build a nuclear bomb. Just please leave us alone. And then the United States said, oh yeah, we'll leave you alone. All right. We'll leave you alone 6 feet under the damn earth. Let's keep going.
In Syria, protests lead to major opposition movements against the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. With the Syrian regime and the Iraqi regime weakened, and the United States withdrawing from Iraq in 2011, suddenly there's a radical Islamist group that spawns in the middle of Iraq and Syria. It's called ISIS. And they start ripping through Iraq, ripping through Syria. Now everybody says the United States has to remain in the Middle East. 2013, there's allegations that Assad is using chemical.
I hope everybody understands the implications of what he said. Now, is that true? I don't know, but it's noteworthy. This is like the 5th time I use that word. I got to stop. Mysteriously, around this time where it looks like the United States is getting ready to leave the Middle East, just at the right time, ISIS comes into play. Now, to whose benefit would it be that the United States stays in the Middle East? Well, of course, Israel. So that's interesting.
Chemical weapons. They say we have to intervene and overthrow the government. Obama declines, but he does eventually get involved in 2014 and 2015. We start bombing pro-government forces, and we're bombing ISIS. This is the history of the Middle East. Israel's at war with all of its neighbors. All of its neighbors start to die. There's war in Lebanon. There's war in Iraq. The government of Libya is toppled. The government of Egypt is toppled. The government of Syria is toppled. Egypt and Jordan are forced to make peace. They become U.S. puppet states. This is the history of the Middle East. Now, why does Iraq and Syria and Libya and even Iran at one point, why do they have nuclear programs? Because Israel, at the same time, is pursuing regime change against all these different countries. Israel's allied with the United States, and one after the other, the dominoes are falling. There's a civil war in Somalia. There's a civil war in Sudan, which splits them into two countries. Now there's a civil war in Sudan. Everywhere they look, they see the governments falling to civil war, regime change, or U.S. occupation. So they want to nuclearize. Iraq gets a nuclear program, they get bombed. The United States comes in and dismantles it, they get invaded anyway. They didn't even have nukes. Libya gives up their nukes, they get bombed and replaced anyway. Syria's program gets bombed and they give it up, they get regime changed anyway. This is why Iran wants a bomb. And of course, Israel is protected from all of these conflicts because they're the only ones that have the bomb. They've got the United States in their pocket. They've got the neocons in the administration. They're protected from any kind of accountability. They've got two aces in the hole.
The rest of the video, I would encourage you guys to check it out. I don't think, we have to go. We can play the rest if you guys want to, or if you want to, Priest. But that pretty much is a synopsis as to what's been going on. The entire region, from North Africa to the Middle East, upwards of even Turkey. And it's ironic that a couple weeks ago, I believe, there's a video of some Israel lobbyist, and he's saying, after we're done with Iran, we need to look at Turkey next. Well, Turkey's been a historical ally of Israel. They've sometimes publicly condemned some of the things that they've done, in particular with what's been going on in Gaza, but they never actually hands-on done anything about it. So what has Turkey done that would provoke Israel to think that there's an actual genuine threat over there? Nothing. But again, this is all a part of the greater Israel agenda. The Nile River, rather the Euphrates River, flows in parts of Turkey. That is their goal. They want that land. And so when you hear about, Sudan is in a civil war, they overthrew Libya, they overthrew, or I said Yemen is in a civil war. All these various nations and they have civil wars that are getting bombed, regime changed. I'm not saying Israel's behind it necessarily, but I think if there was a candidate for someone who is behind it, certainly they're on the list. And this is all to forward their agenda of obtaining greater Israel. So I guess we can conclude with that unless you want to continue going.
Oh, that's good. That's good. We'll open it up for, I know the professor had a question earlier. We'll open it up for questions, comments, and smoke. There is a link in the chat for the questions, comments, and smoke. What's going on with the peoples today? All praise to the Most High. The Greater Israel Agenda, y'all. Get that PDF presentation in the description box. It's going down, y'all. It's going down.
Okay. Is not CERN located in Turkey? Yeah, CERN is in Turkey. Is it? I think so. It is all Trump, guys. Israel is now controlled by Trump. Absolutely not. Completely incorrect. Israel is definitely not controlled by Trump. And if one was to make an argument, it would be the other way in reverse, that Trump is in control of Israel. Why would Trump say no new wars? We're not going to fight any more wars. And then now we're getting ready to invade with ground troops in Israel. To whose benefit? To whose benefit does the United States fighting against Iran? Who benefits from that? The United States doesn't benefit from that. Why are we over there? That's the $1 million question. Why is the United States over there trying to overthrow, successfully, essentially, overthrowing the government of Iran? Completely incorrect. CERN is in Switzerland. You're right. It's not in Turkey. I don't know why I said that.
Good edification. Y'all taking that new gorilla fade or nah? I mean, if somebody...
He was already offered a fade. Listen, he can say whatever he wants. He turned it down.
A free $5,000. Listen, a free $5,000 from a brother who wanted to see it. I wouldn't have gave him a red cent, but the brother said he wanted to put up $5,000 to get him cleaned up. Somebody comes to you with $5,000, says Gentile salvation. You still say no? It is what it is. We're moving forward.
Well, I'll just say this briefly, because I know there's probably, we got 250 people in here, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same question. I've already addressed it in my video. I guess he's uploaded a couple other videos, which is very weird, but it doesn't matter. Here's what does matter, and here's the point. The point is, he was offered a debate. Can Gentiles be saved? He says, no, that's too ambiguous. We should have the debate be, will the prophesied Messiah save Gentiles? Now, you have to ask yourselves, what does that title mean? Will the prophesied Messiah save Gentiles? Well, that means we're going to stick to prophecy primarily, which in and of itself, I don't have too much of an issue with. What I do have an issue with is at the end of the conversation, when I told him, hey, you're just clearly trying to avoid a lot of the literature in the New Testament. He said, of course I am. It's a tactic because I don't believe in those books. So he's admitting he doesn't believe in those books, that being probably Paul's epistles, Luke, Mark, etc. And so when I now agree to a title that says, will the prophesied Messiah save Gentiles? Now it's essentially you asking me to fight with my hands tied behind my back. Because when I go to Paul, or when I go to Mark, or when I go to Luke, now you can, in the eyes of the audience and at least yourself, say, well, I don't have to address some of those arguments because they're not on topic.
I don't believe it.
That's not, one, I don't believe it, and two, it's not on topic. That's not the prophesied Messiah.
The point is this.
Real quick in closing. So to try to extend an olive branch, because I guess I'm being accused of not wanting this debate to happen. I would love for this debate to happen. I would debate him right now and I said, how about we do this topic? Since you're saying, will the prophesied Messiah? Well, who is the prophesied Messiah? Christ. So I said this, and this is my final offer, and there's nothing else. Will Christ save Gentiles? Period. Or can Gentiles be saved by Christ? Anything related to that. Anything other than that is you attempting to try to do some type of publicity thing and run from the game, or run from you play a game and run from the debate. So he does not want the debate. I understand why, because it would be a completely one-sided affair. I guarantee it.
Yeah, so we're moving forward. The point, nobody questioned why would he want $5,000? It's like Canelo and Bud Crawford. Remember, Canelo was like 50 million, and then Turkey Al-Ashiki was like, all right, we'll give you 50 million. He was like, he tried to price himself out so he didn't have to take the fight. Then Turkey Al-Ashiki was like, I'll give you 50 million. Then Canelo said 150 million because he know if I'm gonna get my ass whooped, I need the bread. So you got to ask yourself, why would somebody be like 5,000? You never got the most you probably got was 500 ever.
Yeah,
$5 million
for free, because now we're being accused of wanting money. I don't get anything from this debate, not a dime. I don't care. I want people to see the truth. I don't even care as much as winning the debate, which will happen, as much as I care about winning souls. That's the money that I'm going to win, spiritual money. You can get your $5,000. I want there to be 5,000 people live in the building seeing what's going to happen when we knuckle up. But no, it's all good. All praise to the Most High. We got a link in the chat.
No, William. We asked him. He said 2,500. Well, first he said no. Then he said 2,500 to do it. Then he said, nah, to hell with 2,500, 5,000.
Yep.
Then so a random brother was like, I'll put up the 5,000. I believe in the presentation. Go clean him up. And so we try to. Either way, we're moving forward. Prayers to that brother and his family. Lord willing, the Lord protects his mind and body. We're moving forward. Okay, there's a link in the chat, though, y'all. Any questions, comment? Y'all want to save Massa. Huh.
If you actually believe that, I'm going to be honest with you, Brother Larry. I'm not going to insult you, but you need to pray to God. You need to pray to God that he gives you a mind that can comprehend things, basic English grammar. Did you not just hear what I just said? What about what I just said would even indicate that statement? What warrants that statement? It's brothers like you that write like this.
Yeah, no, he was right. Like he's just like, hey man, you guys are scared. Hurry up and give him 5,000. I guarantee you don't even have 5,000 in your bank account. Guaranteed.
But any questions?
He's in debt. You're in debt 5,000.
I'm in debt 5,000. So I could. We're
all in debt.
Listen,
we're all in debt 5,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could use the 5,000. I ain't gonna lie. Shit, he's getting 5,000 for a debate. Sheesh. I would just Yeah. Anyway, let's keep going. Where are we at?
Any questions in the chat? Any questions in the chat? You could click the link. We're going to stay on for a few more minutes. Julie, can you please stop spamming? We need to pray to our coming King Yeshayah, because Yahweh only lives in him. We are under the new blood covenant now. Okay, sister. All praises to the Most High.
Somebody asked about Matthew 10 and 5. I'll answer it. It says, these 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles and into any city of the Samaritans. Enter ye not. And then he goes on to say, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So this is a scripture that I've used in the past, and other brothers will as well, to say that, see, Christ is giving a commandment to the apostles not to go to the Gentiles, which means that they cannot get salvation, or else he would have sent them to the Gentiles. Now, what you would be also conceding to, using that logic, is that the Samaritans are also not Israelites. It says, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and then to expound, into any city of the Samaritans, enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So now what it's doing is juxtaposing the Samaritans from the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, one, would I say that there are no Israelites in the towns of the Samaritans? No, I certainly wouldn't. But when we see in John 4, Christ goes to the city of the Samaritans and abides there for 2 days. And what do they say? Now we see that you are the Savior of the whole world. So what is Christ doing with the disciples here in Matthew chapter 10? He's telling them to go to the Israelites first. Don't go to the Gentiles yet. Go to the Israelites first. Which is why we then see in Matthew 28 with the Great Commission, then the proclamation for the disciples in particular to go to all nations is introduced. So that's not a good verse to, I'm not saying that you're using that, Mr. Samuel. For anyone that wouldn't be a good verse to say salvation is only for Israel.
Well, y'all, I want to also show this in Acts chapter 8. This is in Acts chapter 8. In Acts chapter 8, he said, in Matthew 10, he said, don't go to Samaria. But why do we see them in Samaria in Acts 8 and 4?
Yeah.
Giving them the Holy Spirit. What do we do with this? All right, somebody get Julie out of here. She's clearly not even listening. She's just typing. Get Julie out of here. Bye, Felicia.
Somebody asked about additions to Esther 1, 9 to 10. If you just read earlier in the chapter, Samuel, all you have to do, this is Mordecai speaking about, or is this Esther or Mordecai? The point is they're speaking about what happened going back 24-ish 100 years ago. That scripture is not referring to end time deliverance through the Messiah. It's referring to God delivering our people from Haman during the story of Esther and Purim. You're not on mute.
Oh, what's up, bros?
Tony, what's up?
Status, man. I wanted to talk about last time we was talking about Daniel 7 and the little horn.
Okay, what about it?
I said you guys believe that was America, but
yeah.
I disagree. I believe that was Papal Rome.
Okay, so it says that the little horn took down 3 of the 10 horns. So who are the 10 horns?
Okay, yeah, that's where we was at last time, man. I have it right here in my notes.
Yeah, who are the 10 horns?
So the 10 horns are kingdoms that come from the 4th beast, which will be the Ostrogs. I might butcher some of these names. The Ostrogoths. Huh?
Who's the 4th beast?
Rome.
Okay, so these are 10 nations that spring from the Roman Empire.
Yes.
Okay.
Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Sueves, the Burgundians, Franks, Anglo-Saxons, the Lombards, the Hugues, and the Alemanni. I'm bad with this. With
The Vandals aren't a
enough.
nation. Vandals are a people. They're not a nation. Like,
Well,
is there a nation Vandalia? Vandal is they're like a Germanic people.
well, they grew to be a collective of people, I guess.
You know what? I'll
according to my
correct myself.
research.
There was a Vandal kingdom. So you know what? I will correct myself. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, then now you want the three. I do believe America is in Bible prophecy, though.
Yeah, real quick.
Revelations.
While you're looking for that, when was Papal Rome established?
I think 538 AD.
Okay, so 538 AD. So who are the three nations that Papal Rome took down? It would, of course, have to have been after 538 AD.
No, 538 AD is when they accomplished, like, uprooted all three of them. Like, that's when they was at their full strength. It would be the Oshkirks, the Vandals, and the Heruli.
Okay, Papal Rome took down. Let me see if I can find something real quick. So here's the issue. There's a few. Are you an Israelite, or are you a Christian, or are you a Christian that knows he's an Israelite? What is your position?
Well, according to you guys, I'm an Israelite.
I understand. Well, according to yourself, you're a
I
Protestant.
would say just a follower of Christ, Christian.
Okay, I understand. Are you you're a Protestant, not a Catholic, right?
No, I'm not a Catholic at all.
Okay, so if you're not a Catholic, you would be a Protestant. So if in fact, or a Mormon, are you a Mormon or Jehovah's Witness?
No.
You're a product of the Protestant Reformation, right?
I guess.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So in Daniel 7, it says that this same horn, after it would take down 3 of the 10 horns, would subsequently make war with the saints and prevail against them. The saints, you would say, believers in Christ, yes?
Yes. Wait, sorry, what did you say? That last part?
Okay, saints are believers in Christ, yes?
Yes.
It says, I beheld the same horn, which would be, you're saying, the Catholic Church, essentially, right? Made war with the saints and prevailed against them. For the first 1400-ish years of Christianity, every Christian was a Catholic. So you're saying for the first over millennia of your faith, you were all a part of the beast, essentially?
No, I disagree.
No, but how do you disagree?
First of all,
okay,
the Catholics persecuted the faithful believers.
Okay, you're not listening. Prior to the Protestant Reformation, how many churches were there?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, you had the Catholic Church, you had Eastern Orthodox, you had other Orthodox churches somewhere split in between there. But at one point in time, there was just the Catholic Church. And that was for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years until you had different ecumenical councils that then resulted in the split to where you had the Eastern Orthodox and other Orthodox churches. This is yet still before the Protestant Reformation. And prior to that, it was basically all one centralized belief system with very minor disagreements. So if that's the case, which it is, you can all go look at this in history, that would mean that you would be saying that all believers were a part of a church that the Bible calls the beast, the devil and Satan.
I would say true believers who kept the commandments of God were never in the Catholic Church, because first of all, their doctrine contrary to Scripture way before
what church
Martin Luther did that. They were already going contrary to Scripture. And
what church were they in?
Huh?
So what church were they in? If they were in the Catholic Church, were they in the Eastern Orthodox Church? So that's the church.
Were you saying all Israelites were Catholics?
No, I'm asking.
No. So what church were they in?
I'm asking a simple question. So
no, that's not a.
It is a good question.
That's not a good question because
just answer.
Not everybody was Catholic.
One moment, please. Prior to the Protestant Reformation, you had the Roman Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox, and I believe there was another Orthodox church. Those were the 3 churches. If they weren't Catholics, what church did they belong to? You said any believer who kept the commandments was not in the Catholic Church. Well, they were in a church, so which one were they in?
According to history, the Dark Ages started around 476 AD.
I didn't ask you about the Dark Ages.
But the Catholic Church is a part of the Dark Ages. The Roman Empire turned into the
What are you?
little hold on. Let me explain
What are
my
you
point.
talking about? I'm asking you a direct question, Tony.
Hold on. Let me talk. Let me hold on. Let me explain myself.
Okay, Tony. Here's what's gonna happen. I really hate muting people. I really
You're
don't like
trying to. You're trying to.
Stop. I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna let you speak. Seriously, I'm going to let you speak. I don't like muting people. For the audience, it looks bad. I don't like when two people are over talking each other. I want you to unmute yourself momentarily, brother. I asked you a very direct question. You said that any believer that kept the commandments of Christ and God was not in the Catholic Church. So I'm asking you, in the year 500, a believer, what church would he be in?
I would say the church he was in.
What church? What's the name of it?
I can't say. And there was many churches before the Roman Church. There was many churches. Paul taught to many churches.
Okay.
So you're going. You're not trying to get the truth of my position. You're trying to just pin me in a corner and not hear me out.
I think I've answered your question sufficiently. You haven't answered mine.
Yeah, you answered my question, but now let me explain my point.
Go ahead.
Because at the same time, it cannot be America if you're trying to make America, because America did not. I'm not even going to go into that. But when the Roman Empire, do you believe the Roman Empire started the Dark Ages?
Started the Dark Ages?
Yeah.
I don't know if they started the Dark Ages.
But are they a part of it?
What do you mean a part of it? I'm not trying to play 21 question. I'm asking you to define what you mean.
So according to history, the Dark Ages formed the New Kingdom, spread of Christianity in Europe. I'm trying to see the fall of Western Rome, early mid-age Dark Ages. So at one point, there were Christians being persecuted around 500 AD by Rome.
For what?
And them for keeping the commandments of God.
What commandments?
Including the Sabbath, being considered like Judaizers or those who go against what they believe. When Constantine started to make Sunday, when Constantine started to actually change the Sabbath and make Sunday the observance for Christians, and then that Rome eventually hands over its power to the papacy, to the church, and then we have a church and state combination. That's what the papacy was at its strongest height. It was a church and state. And they persecuted the church for 42 months, which I do not believe is actually 42 months literal, because in the book of Daniel, days can equal a year. So the papacy at its full strength persecuted God's church from 538 AD to about, 798 AD, when the papacy captured by they lost their power.
Okay, so when we see, do you agree that little horn in Daniel is the whore in Revelation? It's the same thing, correct?
The whore would be the whore, yes, in a sense, yes.
Babylon. Now, here's the issue, brother. In Revelation 18, we see a physical destruction of Babylon. Revelation 18, and I'll start at verse 2. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Then it goes on to say, in verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. If this is a theological belief system, how do you burn with fire, destroy with death and pestilence a theological system? This is a physical location. So are you saying this is the Vatican?
Yes. So the papacy, the papacy is not just a church. The papacy at its full strength, because the papacy is not at its full strength right now, which will be revived by the land beast, the earth beast in Revelation 13, when John said, "I seen another beast coming out of the earth," which I believe is America,
Okay.
which will revive. Hold on, which will revive the papacy back to its full strength, which is church and state.
Okay. I'm asking you
The
something.
papacy at its full strength is not just a church; it's the church with full control of the state.
Okay. So you're saying the Vatican City, the tiniest country in the world, is being destroyed, is what's being described in Revelation.
Yes.
That's so Vatican City being destroyed, this tiny, 2-mile radius city is going to make all of verse 9. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. That mighty city, Babylon. So the merchants of the earth are going to weep and wail because they don't buy. What does Vatican City sell?
Well, the Vatican is actually really bigger in roots than you think, and have more power than you think. But at the same time, they're not at the power. Hold on, I'm telling you.
A very specific question. You're saying that this is describing Vatican City, the city. So it says when the merchants of the earth see the city get destroyed, they're going to say, "Oh my God, we used to buy so much stuff from Vatican City." That's what you're saying?
Are you talking about the Revelations
18?
I'm saying yes, they have the power on the sea and on the they have that type of power. Yes. So when Babylon is being destroyed, yes, they will mourn because at this point, because you have to remember before Babylon is destroyed, the Vatican City will eventually control the whole world again. That's what Revelation 13 is saying.
Okay, that's not what I asked you at all.
I said yes.
Okay. It says within Babylon there will be gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, all manner of vessels of most precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheats, beasts, sheep, horses, chariots, and slaves and souls of men. When Vatican City is destroyed, you're telling me the nations of the merchants of the world are like, "Oh my God, we used to buy so much cinnamon from Vatican City"? That's what Revelation 18 says, brother. But you're welcome anytime.
Hold on. Why are you kicking me?
Well, because you weren't saying nothing.
I was reading it. My fault. Well, yes. So yes.
So Vatican City exports cinnamon?
I'm saying they have a lot of pull in the community and how it operates that we
in the community of cinnamon. Okay. Well, let's just take.
But may we continue the conversation? I want to read. So you.
I got you. Hold on, we're almost done. Vatican City does not export cinnamon. Let's see. This is Vatican City export ivory. Let's take a look. Vatican City does not export, trade, sell ivory items. Does it export wood? Maybe wood. No, Vatican City does not export wood. Okay, these are all things that. What else does it say? Scarlet. Maybe it exports scarlet. Nope. Okay, it doesn't export scarlet either. What about gold or silver? You might have something here. Does it export gold? Well, gold's not a. No, they don't. The gold doesn't come from there. Okay, interesting. What about silver? Maybe the silver get exported there. No, it doesn't export silver either. Brass and marble. Let's try brass and marble, and then we'll be done. Brass, maybe brass. Nope, sorry, no brass either. Marble. No marble either. No marble either. But according to this, Babylon would export gold, silver, stones, pearls, linen, purple, silk, scarlet, wood, ivory, wood, brass, etc.
Yes, and I understand your position. Question, but like I said, not only when Babylon gets destroyed will Babylon be destroyed alone, but also those who align with her. So I would say it's still Rome in the sense that the papacy has a lot of pull in places we may not know. And
well, then you can't prove it. You're just saying you can't use it as argument.
Huh?
You said you don't know. So if you
I said
use it as argument.
I didn't say I didn't know.
You just said they might have power in like the cell of those things that you
I
own.
say they do. I say they do. They have a lot of allegiance in the world that you might not know.
Oh, that I might not know. Okay. Well, I disagree, brother, but I appreciate the conversation. We're about to wrap the class, but you're welcome anytime. All right, then, brother. All right, y'all. The PDF to the presentation is in the description box. If anybody wants to take a look at that, you got the free download right there. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Make sure you like and share the video. And all praise to the Most High. With that, we will say all praises to the Most High and shalom.